Hello and welcome to The Grind, a show where content creators talk directly to content creators. I'll be your so-called host, Austin Ernst, and joining me today as part of Waypoint is Chris, aka RumblePack92. How you doing, Chris?
Man, I am super great. How you doing?
Perfect. I'm happy to be here. Let's get going. Let's get the ball rolling, as they say. And our guest, our very esteemed guest today, is Ian Preschel, aka Ianwhynot. How you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. And I said it earlier, but Mazel Tov on starting everything, man. It's a difficult journey to do stuff like this. So it's definitely
For sure.
awesome to see a bunch of people doing it, especially people that I like and enjoy.
Oh, stop.
What a great compliment come from Ian there. All right, so we usually start the show with just the elevator pitch. Ian, who are you? Where can people find you, and what do you do? Like when for content creation, well, how do you describe what it is you put out?
Oh gosh. That this is always the hardest thing for me. And I feel like it's kind of intrinsically connected to like making stuff online, is that you have to distillate yourself into like the most like serial brand words or whatever. But if I had to give myself the
Sure.
long pitch, it would be I am a funny guy who grew up in New Jersey, and then moved to Japan, um, and then moved back to the US. So that like that's kind of like the journey of like my life. And then what I do is I do random comedy, observational humor stuff. Can we cuss on this show also, by the way?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm trying to reduce
Absolutely.
it, but
Nah,
I'm trying
let it
to
go.
just double check.
Fucking let it fly.
Um, there you go. So I was born in Jersey, so that's like a part of my vernacular. So I need to just double check every time. But yeah, so I'm a guy who's traveled the world, and I've done a lot of random stuff. And from there has come like observational humor and stuff like that. I was also a part of a podcast talked about video games and nerd culture stuff for a long time, the OK Beast podcast. So I talk about video games.
Shout out.
Yeah, rest in peace, dude. OK Beast podcast is like your grandma. You'll never forget. So I did that for
Okay,
many years. And so I talk about video games sometimes. I also run an anime podcast called the A Plus Anime Podcast, and I make videos about that and stuff. So pretty much, like I said, the biggest issue for me is that I like so many things. I like to do so many things that it's hard to distillate. Like I also stream as well, and like sometimes it's about Japanese games, sometimes it's about like competitive MOBA, sometimes it's this, that, and the third. So if I actually had to distillate my entire shtick, is I have ADHD and sometimes I'm funny. That's pretty much what I got.
I love it.
That's
Yeah.
I love it
fantastic.
so much.
Yeah.
There's always something so difficult
like
of
my
having to sit down and look at what you do and then be like, how do I explain this in like 2 minutes?
It's hard, yeah,
It
It's
is
like
hard.
you got to peel back your own
Uneasy.
layers, and it's uncomfortable, and I don't
Exactly.
like doing it,
for sure.
except that I do, and I love doing it. Great.
It's good to get it out there. The answer probably changes every time. To be fair.
Oh, 100%. Like depending on the week, I'm like, oh yeah, like I love talking about Japanese culture stuff because I'll be playing Yakuza on stream and I'll like be speaking Japanese in the background to Kaori, and then other days I'm like, no, I'm like really into Monster Hunter right now, and I'm playing Devil May Cry 5, so I'm an action game guy,
Mhm.
and like, and then other days I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna play Pokemon on stream. Like no, I'm only a JRPG guy, and then I just give up, and I'm like, I can't. I'm Ian, man. If you like hang out with me for 10 minutes and you enjoy it, then just hang out.
Fair
That's
enough.
that's a difficult thing with having like such a range of interests and not necessarily being able to kind of settle on one particular thing. That's something
Yeah.
I've dealt with myself. And they're like, well, what do you like playing? I was like, I like shooters and RPGs
I don't know.
and
Yeah.
video games. I was just like all of it. I don't know. They're like, yeah, but what kind
Yeah.
of streamer are you?
Nailed
I'm
it.
like, video games. I'm like,
One of them.
yeah, I don't
Do
know.
you guys have? I promise this tangent will make sense in a second. But do you guys have siblings?
Yes, yes, I do.
Yeah. So
I have half siblings. So.
half siblings. Okay. So I have 3 younger brothers, right? And we grew up in the 90s, right? Which was the Pokemon era, right?
Yeah,
So
baby.
like so pretty much
Shout
like
out.
we spent the majority of our young adult life being like, "Oh, you like Pokemon? You like the red one, the green one, the blue one, the yellow one? Which one?" Like all my Jewish aunties are like pinching my cheek asking me. And like my brothers and I ended up like we each got like our own Pokemon thing. Like I had Squirtle, so I had Pokemon Blue. I was playing on my Game Boy or whatever, and I usually wore blue always, right? and then my brother, and like I was like the calmer brother, surprisingly, I promise I am. And then my more aggressive brother got Pokemon Red. He had Charizard, like fiery personality, always wore red. Like, and the list goes on. Like, the green brother was more calm and just like everyone liked him. He's the golden boy. And then Pikachu, my youngest brother, like everyone thought he was adorable, right? So I spent, I think, the majority of my young adult life trying to like partition, like I was like more easily sellable as a youth. Like, oh, Ian, he likes blue, he likes swimming, he likes water, he likes this. But now as I'm getting older, I'm like, dude, especially now with like the word content. If you've ever like seen my stream, I hate the C word is what I call it. There's other C words I know, which gets into it. That's a whole different can of worms. But I don't like the word content because it's like we were talking about before. Like you're force distillating yourself into like this like cereal commercial, right? We're like, yeah, man, it's like that commercial of the guy in his garage with all the Lamborghinis, where it's like, hey guys, I don't know if you know me, but I got 10 Lamborghinis in here and I read 10 books a day. Here's my secret. Click this video down below, right? And like I'm not even trying to knock that guy, and I've said this like in the past, like, yo, if you're trying to make money doing stuff online, A, that's hard. B, that takes time. C, to actually be successful, you need to either like fully be stealing from people or be really good at your job, right? So I don't necessarily knock that, because I've had people in the past criticize me like, yo, bro, what's the problem? You don't want people to make money? I'm like, no, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. But the issue is that I'm very much like my degree was in psychology. I'm like a psych heavy guy. I never want people to forcefully push themselves into a box where they don't belong and then get upset. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm always like, I feel like it's an easier sell to be like, yeah, I'm Ian. That's a much easier way to do it.
Wouldn't it be great to go to just go back
Totally
to
get
the
that,
stuff and
yeah.
be like, yeah, I'm Chris. I like blue and turtles. And they're like, yeah, that's Chris. There you go.
Yeah. Like as a 30-year-old guy, you're at a party. You're like, hey, what do you do? Chris, turtles, dog. That's all you need to know. And the person's like, whoa, shit. I respect this guy.
Damn, bro.
He went there. All right. All right.
I don't know where I got
But
turtles. We were talking about Squirtle, and I'd fixated.
It was there. It was there. You don't have to explain yourself.
I loved it. I love turtles, dude.
So Ian, you put out a tweet semi-recently that I feel like is like super relevant to what we're talking about today. It's not a bad tweet, I promise.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it right now. I know there are some doozies out there, but this one isn't that bad.
Don't worry, I've got a tweet in my back pocket too.
You know what? I stress myself out about making videos, and that ends up making me not make them. So tomorrow I am filming, editing, and posting a video in one day. Tomorrow's video will be about Game of the Year and why it's fucking dumb. So I want to hear the process on that. You said you were stressing yourself out. Like, talk about that, because content creation is why we're here. So you had to film it, edit it, and post it all in one day. How'd that go?
So how did it go? It went surprisingly well, honestly. Usually when I declare things out into the open, God is like, oh, are you going to do that? And then like something happens and then I can't do it. But the stressing myself out thing. So since I transitioned from this being kind of like a part-time gig to this being like a thing that I'm pursuing full time, right? I'm working on projects that aren't my own, right? Like I've worked for like big companies and like also like smaller like content creators. So when I'm giving a product to somebody, no matter how big or small, I'm like, oh yeah, this is to the best of my ability, or this is like what you wanted, right? And usually the person on the other end is like, cool, here's money, right?
Yeah.
And I go, thank you, and then I pay rent with that, right? So like, I think that like, we were talking about psychology before, right? But like, I feel like just in my brain, I almost accidentally trained myself to like be a hyper perfectionist on everything. And then when it came to my own stuff, that process became like diluted and became way more arduous because of it. Like I've talked to my streams before about the process of like figuring out how to learn how to film, right? Because I have friends that do video work that are really, really talented. Like Alex Van Aken is a close friend of mine that like he's amazing at shooting, right? But the beauty of us working together is that I was like the producer and I had the idea, and then Alex was like, all right, let's figure out how to do it, right? and then that's kind of how our relationship worked. So when he went to Game Informer, I was like, fuck, I need to figure out how to do the other side of it too. So it was really like, not a come to Jesus moment because I'm Jewish, but like me realizing like, oh shit, here's like this big deficit in my skills. Let me figure out how to kind of circumvent that. And in a normal year, when I could like call people over to my house that I know in San Diego, or go down to LA and like sit and like learn this stuff extensively, wouldn't be a big deal. I'm like learning how to use all this equipment in my living room alone from YouTube tutorials at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So it's definitely a different vibe. So that, mixed with the stress thing that I talked about earlier, just kind of got me into this this paralysis of like, oh, this idea is good. I shot the game of the year video is actually an idea that I had before, when game of the year would have made sense to post. And I wrote out the whole script, and I actually recently bought like a cheap teleprompter to read off of like the script for real. Like it's like, don't be surprised. It's like $100 thing. It's like very, very cheap looking and cheap feeling. I don't got that kind of money, I promise. But so I got this thing because my memory is so bad and I wanted to read this script, and then I shot it in my breakfast nook, which I had like repurposed into like a filming studio area. And it looked like dog ass, and I was like, I can't post this. And then like 2 weeks went by, and I was like, I have these full scripts written that I think are good and funny, but why can't I, summon the energy or summon the wherewithal to do, like, what's holding me back? And that's when the tweet came out of like, dude, I'm whether this is good or bad, I don't care anymore. I need to figure out a solution. And that's when I literally spent, from when I posted that tweet, plus 5 hours of breaking down the studio that I had just assembled, reassembling it in my living room, shooting that video like with the teleprompter, making sure that it worked, and then moving it back. And like, it was a whole big ordeal, but it was, again, I posted it. It's like when you tell your best friend, you're like, yo, bro, I'm going to the gym tomorrow. If you see me at the 7-Eleven, literally kick my ass. It was like that. It was like, if I don't post a video, someone from my timeline would be like, yo, wait, wasn't he gonna say like, inflammatory video about game of the year being bad? Where the fuck is that? Like, not even necessarily like a bad way. Like, no one's gonna kick my ass at the 7-Eleven on Twitter. But like, it was more like, making sure that I'm accountable to like people, like people that like hearing the dumb shit that I say. So, it's like, it's one of those. So hopefully that answers the question.
It did, yeah. So, like you said, you were in this state of paralysis, and I can totally relate with that. I've been wanting to put out a like video review of all my reviews that I've done, and I just haven't got the courage to attempt it yet. And I know my first one is going to be like dog crap, like you said, like dog ass, I think is the exact phrase you used.
Dog ass was the one, yeah.
I still just want to do it so I can get that off my chest, and then I can improve and see where I can improve and all those things. But so I totally understand that.
So to piggyback off of that too, like, so I've been doing video editing now. It's 2021 now. Holy shit, it's 2021. I've been doing video editing in some form since like 2016. Because I started, like, my first video ever was a video about Persona 5, and it was Persona 5 in Tokyo, and I literally like shot it on my fucking, like, it was like my Google Pixel 2, like on a skateboarding through like my neighborhood, then mixing in footage of Persona and stuff like that. And like, what I'll say about that video was unprompted. It didn't go on the OKB's channel. It was just something that I wanted to do for me. And I kind of was chasing. I'm now medicated, so I don't have those like crazy like creative high moments of staying up for 10 hours and editing something, right? But like, what the advice I'll give in terms of that is like kind of exactly what you're saying. That mental roadmap that you had is correct. Is that whether or not it's good or bad doesn't matter when you're learning, right? Like, if I put out a video now, like the video that I posted about Game of the Year, if that was bad, I should feel bad because I've been doing it for 5 years, right? Like, someone who's just starting out, or someone who is like freelance or is aspiring to do freelance stuff, like, if they put out a video and it's just okay, that is better than everybody who didn't put out the video, right? Like, and I think if you want to get like a confidence boost, or like something to kind of help motivate you is look at your contemporaries on YouTube. Like if you're looking at like I wanted to make an anime video, so I looked at my contemporaries and a lot of their videos. I was like, oh, I like this video. How would I improve it? And then you just take that improve state or whatever, move it to your video, and then you just next time you want to make a video, you look at your past video and say, oh, how would I improve this? And then just cycle through over and over again, like build a compendium of YouTube tutorials, like meet and talk with other video editors or whatever the creative field is that you're looking into. And then next thing you know, 5 years will go by and then you'll be like pretty all right, decent at it.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that it's like everything that I do in my own stuff isn't like extremely derivative of just what I've seen other people doing, and it's like, hey, I could probably do something like this, and it's like, but I'll tweak it here, and I'll do this thing, and I can do this over there instead,
Well,
and
Well, you said it's derivative, right? And I think that I think is the first. Like, I'm someone who is like, I mentioned at the top, and I mentioned all the time, I have ADHD. I want to make that clear. This is not a joke. So the thing with me is that I get bored very, very easily, both creatively and also with like just stuff in general, right? So when something grabs me, I'm like, oh, this is creative. It's new. It's doing something intelligently, right? So for me, another. My cat is screaming.
yeah, it picked it up. It's fabulous.
Yeah,
it picked it up. Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah. She's a talker. Sorry. But
no worries.
But yeah, so so what I do is like there's also nothing wrong with going, hey, I really like this this piece of content or this video or this person, right? Let me try and jack their style, because the Game of the Year video, like part of that idea was kind of stolen from an H Bomber Guy video that I had been watching. I'd watched the most recent video. It's Fallout New Vegas is genius, and here's why. And
I saw that video. It's a great video.
Yep. It is so, like, a little side plug. It is so good. It made me go and buy the game, and it is now one of my favorite games of all time. It's
a good game.
So
New Vegas is great.
So good. And I'm like JRPG guy. So like when I open, I was like, yeah, whatever, H Bomber Guy, man from England. What do you know, dude? And I'm like, oh my God, this game seems really rad. And then I played it. I'm like, oh my God, this game is fucking genius.
There was a point in time where if you said I play Western RPGs, it just meant Bethesda games.
Yeah, that's literally what it was. Like, I can't even think of any other ones. Like, what, Kingdoms of Amalur? Is WoW a Western RPG technically?
Yeah, it's a Blizzard in Austin.
Yeah, there you go.
Either way, I digress.
I have no idea.
But yeah. So rewinding a little bit, don't like it. The thing that frustrates me, seeing people that want to do stuff like this, stuff that you guys are doing, right, is like literally just being like copy paste. Like, oh, I love video game, and I know that man on my phone machine talk about video game. Me talk about video games same way. Why know people like my video game show, right? Like, and people get really mad and like worked up because of that, right? And like you said, like, you need to take an idea, right? Like, podcasting is not original by any means, right? Like, obviously it's been going on for like a billion years. I think in the year 3, Griffin McElroy emerged from a hole and was like, bam bam, and then all the podcasts emerged from there, right? But like,
bam bam.
Yeah, bam bam. Exactly. Evolution is real, people. Get with it. So the thing that like you guys are already one step ahead of is like, you're not just copy pasting. You're like, oh, well, podcasts are cool. I like talking about video games, but the thing that I really like is talking about the stuff behind the video games. Like, let me talk to like someone who like is a Twitch streamer or a video creator. Like, that's an interesting conversation. And the advice that I would give is like, chase those interesting conversations, chase those interesting ideas, because that's going to instantaneously make you like not successful, not like better, but like you'll be like, kind of rewinding a little bit from before, you're more invested because like it's yours. It's not just like, oh, I'm copying like Podcast Beyond, but me and my 2 friends. It's like, no, my show is dumb. We talk about, I don't know, coffee in the beginning. They don't do that on the other thing, and now I'm instantly more invested in the bits and stuff that we do, right? And I know that this is not like me just giving advice hour, but like
it can be if you want it to be, though. You know?
I mean, well, because now here's the thing: I never talk about this shit because all my friends from back home like work at like hospitals and shit, and and they like have kids and like they'll roll up to me like, "Hey, you still edit video?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How is that?"
Oh my
And I'm
god.
like, "Well, I had this .h264 exporter error yesterday, and I swear to God, it was the end of my rope. So I used a compiler, and the guy's like, dude, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't care." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "I gotta go into surgery. I'll see you later." Right? So like,
Oh
it's the
yeah.
only time where I can talk about it. You know?
Absolutely. There's just that feeling of watching all your friends go do like important things, and then it's like, oh well, what do you do? Like, I talk about anime on the internet.
Yeah.
they're
Pretty
like,
much.
oh, you still do that? I'm like, yeah.
Yep. I have two of my close friends. One is an aerospace engineer, and then one is a neurologist. And they're like, literally, we had that exact copy paste conversation. It's like, "Hey, how's work going today?" Like, "Man, I had crazy surgery today. It was really rough. It's touch and go. But we got through it." And he's like, "Yeah, dude, we're working on this laser patent. It's nuts, man. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about it." And they're like, "What about you, Ian?" I'm like, "So I watched season 2 of this anime with the big titty girl. And like, the story wasn't good, but like, I watched the whole thing." And they're like, "Ian, you're 30 years old, dude. Please do something else." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, man, whatever." But then my wife is next to me. She's the one watching the big titty show. I'm just sitting there on the couch because she won't let me change the channel. But anyway,
The amount of time
the
the amount of times I've come home to my wife watching Food Wars, and I'm
yo,
like, oh my god, you're still watching this?
Soma, baby. Yo, you gotta watch that show. It's so
It's
good.
good.
You learn
It's
so much
very
about
good.
cooking, dude. One
Legitimately.
of my favorite dishes I ever cook is from that show. But rewinding a little bit to the original idea that I had is don't be afraid to be unprofessional. I think another thing, like I've had people ask me, like, "Hey, can you listen to this podcast? Like, I know that you did OKB stuff for a while. Like, can you give me any pointers?" And I think it was Albob on Twitter said like, "I feel like I'm finally getting into my groove of podcasting," and I'm like, yeah, because like you're not like worrying about an agenda, you're not worrying about like saying the intro right, like you're just hanging out with your friends and talking about this thing that you love. Because I can tell you right now, a lot of the podcasts that I've been asked to listen to in the past from people that I like as friends, it sounds like fucking paint drying. And I tell that to their face. I'm like, "Bro, I love you. You're such an interesting person. How are you sapping your own personality in audio form? And you're like audio visual waterboarding me with a shitty personality that isn't yours." Like, you know what I mean?
Why have you done this to me?
Why have you tortured me like this, dude? Why are you Guantanamo Baying my friendship with you when we can just hang out? And like, I think a lot of people in the beginning of doing anything, like making a video, doing a podcast, or whatever, like are like, "Well, I know all the people that I watch. Well, not all the people, but like I know the people that I watch are professional. I watch the IGNs, the Kotakus, whatever. They have like ads and they have this, that, and the third. I have to be like that too." And it locks them into this like, "Hello, my name is Ted, and I'm here to talk about Food Wars. So in episode 2, the girl's titty was shiny." And like, it gets like to be like unlistenable or like uninteractable. That's like in the videos that I do or in the podcast that I do, my favorite part is the bit or the joke between the script that I didn't write that always ends up making me laugh the most because that wasn't scripted. It was real in the moment that I thought of. And that's I think something that people will connect with more or like people will enjoy more than like you reading off a script or you being like, "Hey guys, it's me in my garage with my Lamborghinis." You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah, I love what we do at Waypoint because it genuinely feels like it's just you're just hanging out with the guys. We talk about that all the time. Where it's like this doesn't feel like a lot of work. It just feels like we literally get on and talk and we have a good time. That's why I love what I do for sure.
Yeah. That needs to be the guiding light. I've done many a podcast, many a group thing. Never lose sight, no matter what happens, of we're just hanging out. Don't worry about it. Don't let like I'm someone who hates egos, right? I grew up in New Jersey. There's lots of bullying growing up,
What?
which yeah, I mean,
In
fucking
Jersey?
gabagool. Not there, anywhere but Jersey. Jersey is really just northern Florida. I'm gonna have to break it to you guys. Like everything from Florida to New Jersey is just Florida, and then New York happens, and then it's white people in the snow. That's pretty much all of America. But and then Bernie's up there somewhere, not in heaven in Vermont.
There-ish.
But yeah, but anyway, like the thing that I've also seen in like, and this is like not me, but like other contemporaries, is like you guys communicate, and I can already tell just by talking to both you guys in this chat together is that y'all are on the same page, right? So like the thing that has really seen that I've seen many groups fall by the wayside in the past of like one person's like, nah, bro, I'm fucking grinding until I'm the CEO of the best video game conglomerate of all time. And one person's like, I like Smash Brothers, you know? Like,
Shout out.
yeah. So like that I think is another thing. If you're working with a big group, right? Make sure you're all on the same page. If you want to have a leader, assign a leader. If you don't want to have a leader, go full Russian mode and have everybody have equal say, which I think is my style.
Russian. Just
full Russian mode. Dude.
It's our podcast.
Yes, hello, comrades. Welcome to the podcast. We are all together. Mother Russia is the podcast, and then you are all comrades in podcast. My dad is Russian, from Russia, so yeah.
Fair enough. So I have one more like generic question, and then I'll hand it over to Chris for his questions.
Of course.
So just a horror story, like content creation horror story, something that went horribly wrong. Just one of those.
Oh man. So for me personally, or for like stuff that I've done for other people? Because I have
Either way.
Do this choice.
Okay. All right. So I'll do the one for other people because it's more readily in my mind. So if you have ever made a video ever and you're not using like iMovie or whatever, you probably are using Adobe Premiere. If you're listening, person who made Premiere, you are a war criminal and I will find you. You are the worst human being in the world. I swear to God, Mr. Jonathan Adobe, I'm going to smack the shit out of you.
Jonathan Adobe and his brother Premiere. They're both just the worst.
They're like the property brothers for ruining my life. Those two. And that's actually, I've recently switched programs from Premiere to Resolve because there was for multiple years, like the beginning of me video editing, I had no problems. I was chilling. I was like, wow, let me edit this video, export, hit the button, boop, we're done, baby, cool. Then they did a couple updates, and then suddenly everything crashes. I'm like, I put in an image, crash. I move the thing, crash. I leave the computer to get water. Guess what, bitch? You crashed everything. And like the computer even tells me, like the error message is like, wow, bitch, you left the computer, crash. It says that too in all caps.
I'd be like, you shouldn't have got up. You should have stayed here.
Yeah, that's on you.
It's like a jealous girlfriend or something or whatever. It's like, why'd you leave? Crash.
It's like error message. I want you to know this is your fault.
Dude, a Premiere gaslights the shit out of you. I'm not even kidding. Because okay, and we'll get to that. I'll say this tangent now. I was editing a video yesterday and I exported it 7 times and it kept on giving me an error message, a different one every time. And then finally it set on one error message. It was error message 3. And I was like, hey, why don't you just tell me in English what the fuck is going on with my export? And then I can fix it. Right. And then I go on Reddit and I go on the Adobe Premiere things. And it's like, oh, hey, dude, this is an error message related to this. If you have this hard drive, it means your hard drive is full. Move it to another drive and then that error message will go away. And I was like, wow. $1 billion company. I really wish that they just told me, hey, Ian, choose another external drive instead of being like error code -2.489284. Fuck you. Essentially, I would have rather that than the other. So pretty much all of my horror stories are because I'm working really hard in a project. I'm in the pocket. I'm in the zone. I do the project in like the perfect amount of time. And then I click export and Premiere's like, hey, were you having a good day? Pull out the marker and start writing the Suey note because it's over for you, buddy. You're done.
The Suey note.
The Suey note, dude. So the biggest issue that with this Premiere issue with me, I was doing a project, and I promise this is not supposed to sound like a name drop, but it will sound like one. Prepare yourself.
Right,
I was doing a project for Rooster Teeth. I was doing a freelance project for them, and oh my god, yeah. I hate. Again, back to the content thing. I hate being like, I worked with this company or this YouTuber because it's like I'm trying to big dick people. It's like, oh, dude, you ever hear of this company called Cockmouth? Oh man, Rooster Teeth. They're great. I worked
They're
for
like,
them one
whatever,
time.
Hope
it's no
not.
big deal.
Red versus blue, Rawubi, dude. You ever hear that shit, dude? Whatever. Anyway, but no, so I was doing a project for them, and it was like, I was getting paid the most I'd ever gotten paid for a project ever. I was like really nervous. I was like working with a team of people. There's like a producer or a head editor and then a producer above me, which I'd never done before. It's usually me and one other person. And then unfortunately, I got coronavirus the day that I accepted the job. And it's not like I'm fucking out there anti-masking, fucking licking the tops of ice cream like people are doing, right? I am staying in my goddamn home, not leaving, and somehow I receive it because God hates me. And I'm
Sounds right.
literally I literally like have the meeting with the guys. I'm like, hey, this is the project that we're looking for. Need to cut down this footage. It's a multicam edit. It's very difficult. Are you cool with it? Yes, I'm cool with it. The second I hit end on the Google Hangout with these executive people, I get a fever. And I'm like, oh no. And then it just again, the symptom, I'm okay now. I'm perfectly fine. I'm great. And I made sure to stay quarantined and not spread it anywhere. I'm all good. I promise. I was smart about it.
I trust
But
you.
yeah, I
Good
hope
dude.
so. I hope people trust me. And then like, so the horror story was me trying to like sit here sweating with a heated blanket and an ice pack on, trying to edit a 5-hour shoot down to like an
Oof.
actual watchable piece of product. And then as I'm doing it, I'm like pushing through. I'm like really grinding, grinding. And I do that, and then I get to the
Hey.
export, and I get an export error, and I'm like, my constitution and my emotions cannot survive this export not working. And again, this is like a professional thing where like I have
Mhm.
people above me, I have people above me that need this. This is like it was like a sponsored video. So like, we have sponsors talking to us now. So now I'm like stressed out about getting HBO mad at me. I'm like, am I gonna lose my HBO subscription because I messed up this fucking video? Like, what's going on?
They're gonna take it away from you, dog.
They're like, who is that guy?
That's how they show you.
You
You want to
watch
watch
that?
Wonder
You wanted
Woman?
to
All
watch
right,
Justice
fuck you.
League? Too bad. No
Yeah, you
Snyder
want to
cut for
see?
you.
Yeah, I got Snyder cut off after that. But yeah, so I was like hella nervous, and thankfully, this is also another lesson that I learned is that usually people that like are a part of these big companies, right, that have these like multi-billion-dollar things, the majority of the time they're going to treat you very well because they know that this is a job, right?
Mhm.
I've been treated the worst by people who are like one dude in their basement who's like doing this for fun, or like people who are really trying to aspire to do this thing because it's like their entire life. The people that I
Mhm.
was working with at Rooster Teeth, they're like, bro, listen, if you can't get it to export, let's work out a problem. Let's figure it out. We ended up getting the product on time. It was all good. It worked out like perfectly because the people on the other end were like, hey, send me the .xml file, send me all your media, and then I'll export it. Don't worry about it. Do not stress yourself out. And I'm like, oh, I don't need to stress myself out. Wait, what am I going to do in the meantime then? Well,
Me too.
what? I was no, like legit. Like I sent them a message afterwards, and like this is also advice to people who work in big groups. Like you getting on a Discord call and absolutely twerking out at me and yelling at me is not going to make me want to do anything. I'm just not that type of person, right? And it's like identifying who you're working with,
Mhm.
because there are like sadomasochists who are like, oh, I fucked up one frame of my YouTube video, scream at me, please. Like that's how I'm going to learn. But I'm like a grown adult man who grew up in New Jersey where knives were a thing. And I'm like, don't you yell at me because that activates my fight or flight. Like, I don't want to have to punch you through Twitter. Like, just chill a little bit. You know what I mean? And that was a horror story with somebody else's stuff. I can't really think of a horror story with my own stuff, to be honest, just because I think my attitude with the stuff that I make is like, whatever. Like, I do it for, and again, this is like very common for, well, maybe I won't say common, but like it's common for me where like if I hyper fixate on like the stress of the seriousness of it, I hate it. Like no matter what it
Mhm.
is, like it could be like I went to after I was doing my pre med stuff, I went to art school, right? For like for the rest of my degree, and I used to love art. I would like lock myself in my room growing up, and I would like draw Pokemon, and I would like sit there with like music and just doodle or whatever. And then I got to art school, and like I had this dickhead teacher who was like, "Oh, this is awful." And like the kid next to me didn't even hand in the assignment, and he was like, "Oh, good job, John." I'm like, "Hey, the fuck? I finished. Can we like, what's the difference here? Right. So like, it kind of like killed my desire to like do this thing because this one person was being this hyper serious roadblock
Mhm.
between me and like the thing that I enjoyed. Right. So
Mm.
again, this is not, I don't want to seem like this entire podcast of me being a guest is like talking down to people like, hey guys, it's me. Here's the advice you need to follow. But this is more so like psych and mental health advice, which I can totally give and don't and feel completely comfortable with.
Hey, we're here for
Is
that.
if you
Sure.
hyper focus on some shit, even if you love it, it will eventually grind you down like a pencil and you will be miserable no matter what. So like even if it's like shit that you like to talk about, if you don't like doing it and you know it's because you're hyper stressed about it, take a step back, take a break. You don't need like as much as the grind is important and as much as, like putting out an episode every week and making a video every week is important. I would much rather have a friend that is like happy and enjoying themselves and like making a video once a month or making a podcast once every 2 weeks than a friend who is
Sure. Yeah.
grinding. And literally, like the grind is a good thing, obviously. Like you can grind a sword down to an edge, but you can also grind something down into the ground and have it not exist anymore. And I've met tons of people who are like that. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why I don't really stress or have any horror stories for my own shit. Because the second it gets to that level where I feel like I'm grinding myself down, I'm like, oh, I just won't do this anymore. And then I just go, I just don't. It's like a defense mechanism almost. Um, yeah.
That's fair.
The issue I've run in, I've run
Yeah,
into
I
that because
can.
I'm also the. Oh, I'm sorry, Aston. You go ahead. That's my bad.
As I say real quick, I can relate to that because I took a break from writing my reviews for a little bit. And I'm gonna start up in this new year. I have like 4 or 5 prepped just to go up whenever I want to post them. But like I'm waiting to get like a stockpile of them so I can then start putting them on a schedule and then start working on other ones. So like if I'm just like I'm not feeling it this week, I can just post what I have in my back pocket. So,
Exactly, exactly, and that's a good. Again, this is why I have the HUD to the left of me to make sure that I'm like focusing on my stuff, right?
The
Um,
HUD.
and like that's important to have a schedule, but again, I am very chaos mode where I'm like schedules are very important. Don't get me wrong, but the second you're staring at a schedule, like unless you're like a YouTuber that like makes their full living on posting one video a week to make sure that the views go up or whatever. Like if you're a hobbyist or you're a hobbyist approaching a freelancer, right? Like, bro, get some Prozac, take 2 steps back. It's like relax. Like you don't need to talk about Goku right now. We
Nice
can
glass
talk
of
about Goku
wine,
next week.
smooth
You know what I mean?
jazz. Just
Yes, exactly.
dim the lights a little bit.
all right, take it away, Chris.
Now, to be fair, if I wanted to relax, I probably would talk about Goku for a little while. Just kind of really get the energy out.
Exactly. Yeah, giving your energy.
That's one of my go-to. Absolutely, spirit bomb it. I had to put my little
Chris.
Vegeta back here.
I love
just for-
Vegetable. He's my favorite. He's my favorite
Bro,
BBC character.
He's the best. I got
Mr.
I got the meme one and everything, man. It's great.
I love it. Adorable.
One of the things that I've run into though, I mean, it's to kind of circle back around to the fantastic metaphor you have of it is like, yeah, you can't grind yourself to an edge, or you can just grind yourself down into the ground, and it's kind of finding that balance is rough. Is also a bit of a just kind of a personal tangent and getting off of my chest, but something that I discovered recently, and I'm kind of happy that you brought it up, is that there's an extremely good chance that I might have ADHD and that I've been undiagnosed for many, many, many years.
Hell yeah.
It's one of those things where it just kind of came about. I was in like a Reddit thread, like an Ask Reddit right in there, like, hey, what's something that you identify with, or that's a common thing that you don't identify with? And this one dude is like, oh, I have ADHD and here's all of my symptoms, and I went, huh.
Dude, we were talking earlier about like quarantine, and like one of the big things in quarantine is TikTok, right?
Mhm.
And neuroatypical people are typically very creative, and TikTok is like a perfect medium for them to be like something really quick and just put it out. And there was a video of someone going, wait, do you think this way? And it was like, here's all the things that happen to people with ADHD. And it was like, dun, 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 dun. And my friend, who is completely like neurotypical, it was the doctor guy. He's like, are you is it this bad? I'm like, yeah, bro, it's this bad. And he's like, oh, I apologize for yelling at you about the dishes in 2012. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And I'm like that. I'm so glad that you found that thread and looked into it because like I literally had a psych degree.
Mhm.
I did papers about ADHD. right? I had my parents tell me, "Hey, by the way, we went to the doctor when you were a kid, and you probably had this thing." And I said, "Okay, cool. Why am I not medicated?" They're like, "Oh, it was the '90s," and that was like just
Oh,
a
good.
excuse, right? And then when we moved back from Japan to the U.S., I was like, I couldn't do anything. I was like, like everything is like scatterbrained. I couldn't find a job. I couldn't do X, Y, or Z. Went to a psychiatrist, and I was like, "Hey, there's an omelet in here, dude. I can't use this.
Help.
I need something. Just walk into your local psychiatrist office and just do this. Help me. Help.
This bad. Please help.
This very bad." But yeah, like even someone who like is knowledgeable and like knows about the right terminology, and I even knew what medications I was taking before I took them. Like it took me until I was 28 to get fully diagnosed and like go to a doctor and like reach out and do that sort of thing. And I say this story all the time. When I took my meds for the first time, I was talking to my doctor and he's like, "Hey, don't take these unless it's before like, like 8 a.m. or whatever." And I was like, what's the big deal? And he's like, "They're stimulants. Like you're gonna be up all day." And I'm like, "Okay, fine, whatever." I go to the pharmacy, I get my pills at 3 p.m. I take them, I go to work, I come home at 9 p.m. I instantly fall asleep. And my doctor, I go and talk to him and I'm like, "Is that normal?" He's like, "You fell asleep your first day? You should," and he's like, "You should have been medicated like 10 years ago."
Oh no.
This is like, and I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You do know what's in here, right?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "It's like a science," like my psychiatrist is very chill. And he's like, "It's a stimulant that is like on par with like 8 cups of coffee. And you just fell asleep." Like it's like a methylamine, I think. It's like a form of like meth, essentially.
Yeah.
And the reason it works for people with ADHD is because we have a lower form of neurotransmitter that is connected to adrenaline. And the easiest way for you to bind that, I promise I went to school for this. The easiest way for you, the average medicine to bind to that is through stimulants, which is connected to adrenaline. So I was like, "Oh, is that normal?" He's like, "No, we got to up your dosage like right now." Like, and that's as an adult, right? And like, it's definitely a difficult thing to go from like, I'm a normal person, air quotes normal. I'm a neurotypical person who can do anything. I have no restrictions. I'm just lazy, right? Which is what my immigrant parents told me, right? You're just lazy, right? To go to, "Oh no, I have an issue or I have a problem that can be fixed using therapy, and medication and like different tips." Like this HUD joke is a form of me rerouting a neuroatypical thing. Like normal people don't need size 400 font shit they need to do. Like most people just know to clean the floor. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that you went out, and I'm glad that you like did. Like, what's that journey been like for you? Are you feeling good about it, or
It's extremely recent. I like within the last couple of weeks, kind of recent. To where it's like, I found that thread. I kind of went through it, and I was just sitting there. I was like, it was that sort of realization. I was like, huh, that sounds like me. But then I was like, it's easy to make that sort of like connection though, where it's like, I mean, maybe I could do these things. Like it's really easy to generalize. And I mean, Reddit being Reddit, of course, somebody was like, actually, I have ADHD, and
here's other list.
Here's some more things. I went, fuck. And they're like, hey, they're like, seriously, if you think you might have it, there's some tests you can take online that'll hook you up to like some online specialists. And then I was like, all right, it's 3 a.m. Why not? And so I went through it.
That's already a red flag for me. People with ADHD cannot sleep. Insomnia is hyper.
It's so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
Subgroup. And I opened the show with, I was up at 6 a.m. last night, and that's just a part of it.
I woke up at 4 this morning.
Nice.
It was really cool. I mean, so you can ask Austin or anybody else in Waypoint. It's I mean, it's like I'll have ideas and I'll put it in the Discord or I'll text somebody, and it's like if you were to look at the time codes of anything that I shared to any of them, it's like 4:30 in the morning or like 2 a.m. and I'm like, you took so long to get back to me. And they're like, Chris, you sent it to me at 5:30 in the morning. Like, what was I supposed to do?
What the hell's wrong with you? I'm sending you melatonin in the mail for your birthday now.
I've done the melatonin. Insomnia is a thing that I've been dealing with since I was like 16. I'm 28 now. It's just normal at this point.
Yep.
Which is probably not good.
No. Very bad.
It's
Very
probably,
bad.
it's probably bad. So I mean, so yeah, I took these they're sort of like online like tests or whatever, and I scored very high on them, and I went, oh no.
Nice.
And I was like,
Well, okay, so I know that
No.
it's definitely a visceral reaction, and like here's the thing: the way that I've told to my other friends, who I've had tons of people on the low since I've been more open about my ADHD, reach out to me like, "Hey, bro, I got tested this year based off of the shit that you were saying. I also have it." I'm like,
mhm.
"Mazel tov! Like, what are you doing?" And like we open up a dialogue. That happened, I think, with like 5 or 6 people, right?
Mhm.
In fact, I had a random Twitch person come in and be like, "Wait, you have ADHD? What are the symptoms?" And I started listing off the shit that I do. They're like, "Wait, I'll be right back. I need to go and take one of these tests because I think I have that."
Yeah, they're like,
And
oh
a
fuck.
random, but like it's a random person. I didn't know them. They just like randomly saw my stream one day, and we had this open dialogue about it, right? And we're 3 dudes, right?
Mhm.
Dudes are more likely to die from a mental health issue that they just untreat than like this is probably not true statistically, but like a lot of people from my father's generation, like old world immigrant Russian Jewish dudes, are
Mhm.
dying from heart problems from stress and would rather die from that than go and talk about it.
Oh
Right.
yeah,
So,
that makes
it
sense.
became like my whole thing when I got diagnosed. Like, I am going to make this a facet of my personality so that it can, like, well, it already is, but like, I'm going to be more communicative about it because I don't give a shit if people think that I'm scatterbrained. Medically, I am.
Mhm.
So, whatever,
Honestly, if
and
you've met me and
then
you
it
don't
makes other
already
people
think
more
I'm
comfortable.
scatterbrained,
Yeah.
like
Like,
it's like I'm not gonna be offended when you tell me that. I'm like, duh.
exactly. And
Yeah.
like, that's the
Exactly.
thing. And like, and this is something that's happened with those people that have reached out to me about the ADHD shit is they went and got tested and they got a negative, but they got back like, oh, but I actually was diagnosed with anxiety or depression or like PTSD, XYZ, XYZ, right? So I'm so happy that you went out of your way to even just take the test. That is the hardest part of like, oh, maybe my brain is Swiss cheese and I need to talk to someone about it because that's difficult. And especially in the creative field where, like imposter syndrome is a huge thing, right? Of like,
Mhm.
oh man, my shit isn't good or I'm not, putting video like we were talking about before with Austin, like, oh, I'm not putting videos out enough or whatever. Like creativity and mental health, the Venn diagram is a single circle. Like it's not even like they're separate at all because you talking with editors, you talking with people who are going to watch your video. That's all. Are you making the video, even having the right message, communicating the right message to people? That's all psychology. So like, it's so fucking great. I'm so happy that you took this test, man.
Yeah, yeah. It's took the test. I had a conversation with. I mean, it took me to whatever site it met me with an online specialist, and they were like, yeah, I think you might have ADHD, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna have to go see if I can get myself officially diagnosed and yeah, try and bolt in what is probably just a head full of loose screws at this point. I was gonna say some of the loose screws, but they're rattling, man. It's bad. They're
Oh
loose.
wait, I also just found a connection to creativity and this ADHD conversation. I got the segue right.
Yes, excellent.
So it's and you can finish your thought in a second, but like again, ADHD, I will lose it, right?
Do it. Yep,
So
I know it.
a lot of people ask me, man, how do you get into this video shit? I was like, I just did it. And they're like, aren't you a little bit like, did you go to school for this shit? And I'm like, no. And they're like, but how did you? I'm like, I just ended up doing it. There's no time limit on wanting to do shit that you want to do, right?
Mhm.
Same thing for mental health, right? So you're 28, right? The option is either you go and get help or your brain is broken long term. So that's the through line of if you're curious about your own mental health or if you have the question of like, oh, maybe I should do this creative thing, don't wait. Just summon all your best effort and do it and pursue that passion, pursue that like desire to be better mental health wise. And then what do you have to lose, as my dad would always say. So that's the through line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like like the worst possible thing that it's like, hey, even if it's not like the reaction you're hearing, it's like either you're gonna have it or they're gonna tell you like, hey, your brain's actually better than you expected, and it's like, okay, awesome. Um, yeah, but to kind of slightly segue off of that though as well, just as far as is like I've talked to a couple other people who have come to me and they've been like, hey, it's like, how did you get started? Like, what was it? I was like, oh, literally, I just did it. Before I was Waypoint, before I was Rumble Pack, even me and my old roommate, we had a very short-lived YouTube project that we called Save Point, And funny enough, I actually just
nice.
I just took that logo, I changed the S to an R, and I was like, Rumble Pack, there we go.
Here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. The blue triangles, they live on. Because I mean, we were big Rooster Teeth fans. It's so it's like, can you introduce me to Bernie Burns? Do you have that? You have that direct line, right?
Bernie is my uncle. I have his phone number. I'll call him.
Okay,
right
cool, yeah, awesome. Because I mean, he's coming in and flexing on me.
The room. Sorry.
I just don't have it right now. It's crazy, but I totally.
Yeah.
If only.
But I mean, so, yeah, we were big fans of just like that sort of like whole genre, like that Let's Play genre, and we were like, hey, we want to do that. And we're gonna do a podcast, and we both kind of sat down. And I was like, we've never done any of this before, and I was like, let's just do it. Like, why not?
I've heard that so many times from people. It's like, so me and my boy, fucking Trevor, we're chilling. We're starting a fucking podcast. Me and T Dog, we're doing it. Turn on the mic. Fuck, bro, what do we do?
It was like we got the mixer, we got the mics, we had our cameras, and then we set up. We took weeks like saving up and buying all this. We got capture cards, we're doing all this stuff, and then we sat down and I was like, I don't know how to use any of this.
and that's okay.
Yeah,
though.
for sure.
That like we said earlier, a lot of your stuff in the beginning is gonna be dog ass, just by nature of you learning how to do it, right? But
Yeah.
like literally, even if you make the video and you just send it to your fucking like mom or whatever, and then your mom's like, "Honey, great video," and then you just learn every time, then that's fine. Like that's good,
And I mean,
T Dog can start that podcast.
and that's honestly what it is. Is like if it's something you think you're interested in, is like just try it at least once. You sit down and it's like it's gonna be bad. It's like I'm not even gonna like maybe it's good. It's gonna be bad. And that's just that's how it goes. But it's like you can take that and you can figure out why you don't like it, and you're like, man, this is kind of boring. And then it's like, okay, well, why? Like sit down and be like, well, what is it about this that bores me, and then how can I change that the next time I do it? And they just keep building and iterating until it gets to a point where you at least kind of like it. I'm still at that point where I'm still kind of like I'm not like 100% on everything that I make, but I'm getting there. Unless Austin's on it, and then it's perfect. Then I don't even have to worry about it. I can just sit here and not.
Here I am. Just for you. I can piggyback off that a little bit, though. I can piggyback off that just a little bit. When I first did my Let's Plays, I did Little Nightmares was my first Let's Play I ever did. And just through that first Let's Play, you can see improvement and a bunch of tweaks that I did throughout just that Let's Play, just that like one project. I mean, clearly there's a bunch of episodes, but like when I first started out, my face cam was like literally just an entire rectangle. And then there was an entire rectangle of the gameplay footage. And my audio was displaced. And then the next one, I shrunk it down. I made it like more crystal clear on the gameplay footage, and my audio wasn't displaced anymore. Then as I got in, my face cam changed and my editing improved. And you mentioned how you start to like it. Like, yes, that's totally true. The more you do, you're going to like it or you're not. But I also started to like more of the editing process because I learned new things. And like the process of making it was more fun too, not just the actual product. And that was enlightening for me because I was like, Let's Plays are fun. They're just a lot of work. But yeah, I had a blast doing it. So
it's a crazy, Let's Plays are crazy amount of work.
And that's a good idea too, having like a long-term product to work on, because then you can, like you said, visually see, oh, like this was fun conceptually, but like as I got better with the skills, like it went from something that I thought I could do to at the final product, like the last episode, like episode 10 or whatever. Oh no, this looks like what I wanted it to look like in episode 1. Like hell yeah.
Exactly.
And that's another thing that I would probably suggest is like, don't say you're going to do a podcast from now until the end of time, right? Be like, hey, I'm going to do a 10 episode run of something, see how it goes, improve it, work on my logo, work on my audio, work on my posting or whatever. And then, like you said, like you can have like incremental things. You can look, oh, here, project 1 of the 10 episode thing was really good and it had a good idea. But then by episode 5, I knew what I wanted to be. Now I'll make sure that I know what things are going to be in product number 2, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And I mean, while we're still in in the advice hour, so it's like to touch on my old save point thing again too. Something that it was very short lived because you had mentioned earlier about like not trying to attempt to be professional like from the get go. It's like, oh, these guys do it this way, I have to do it this way. Something that we had tried is we did. I mean, we were doing like Let's Plays, and then we had a podcast, and it's like, hey, we're gonna do one of we're gonna do a podcast and a video Let's Play every single week, one a week, and
No.
we both work full time.
No.
We both work full time, and we fell off that schedule.
Stop yourself from thinking
so fast. I can't begin to tell you how much I hated everything so quickly.
That happens, man. It happens. That's why I'm trying to give that warning of like do less, complete more, and don't fucking make it so that you hate yourself. Because then that's how like not even burnout. Like burnout's a whole different subject, but like that's how you create a scenario in which burnout can be a thing. Like that's like the dry leaves of the creative process. You're like, yeah, dude, we're gonna do 10 videos a week, dog. Me and T-Dog are fucking doing this shit, video essays every fucking day. You're gonna kill T-Dog and bury him in your basement because you're gonna hate each other.
I was just saying, yeah, you're gonna hate like yourself and whoever else you work with. That as the amount of arguments we had, we were roommates. We'd get mad at each other and then walk down the hall. And they were roommates.
Roommates.
Oh my god. I love that Vine so much. R.I.P. Vine.
It's so good. It's dude.
Never forget.
Just like OK Beast, dude, and my grandma.
TikTok. Yeah, all of them up there together.
The three faces in heaven that are looking down at me. OK Beast, my grandma, and Vine.
That's all you need to get on in lifetime, you know.
Remember you. It's all three of them like holding hands.
I had a point, and then it just went.
And then it went, just like Vine, just went up to heaven.
So I mean, it's typically on this show. What'll happen is it's almost a little interview, and we'll just throw out questions. But I really like the way that this one went. But I did have one question, or at least the one that I wanted to get out, and it's not even like content or video game related at all, which is why I waited until a little later towards the end of of the recording. Is you recently had a tweet, and I wanted to yeah, exactly.
How we started.
It's Ian's tweet audit. Okay, I'm down.
Circles back around, and so I was reading this earlier today even not your tweet, just related, but you recently had a tweet where you said Endeavor is the Kylo Ren of My Hero Academia.
Oh no.
And I would really love for you to expound on that, because I'm very curious about what that means.
Okay. So I am someone, let me background for me. I love storytelling. I love anime. I love that medium, right? Yes, I have the serious hands now. We've activated serious mode.
Yes.
And anime by no means is a perfect medium, storytelling wise, everything. It's definitely has its imperfections, right? The issue that issue I think is magnified for me in the shonen genre, the action anime genre. And My Hero Academia is the premier shonen, anime manga right now, right? Or one of them.
I would go as so far to say is My Hero is like everything about like shonen like kind of distilled into one thing. Like it's 100%. It's everything you could ever want from a shonen anime. Like
100%. But that's a part of the issue, is that shonen is not perfect, and when you fully distillate something into its like most like supreme parts,
like
you get some of the bad shit. Exactly. You get some of the bad shit hyper concentrated, right? And my problem, I hate Endeavor and I hate Bakugo in My Hero Academia. And I know that hurts many feelings.
That one hit. That one. Why. You can say whatever you want about it. Bakugo.
So here's the reason why. Now. Okay. I'll talk about Bakugo separately, but the Endeavor shit pisses me off because Endeavor, so in shonen in general, you'll have these characters that are like just like evil fascists or evil criminals, and then they'll do one thing and they'll be like, they'll die and they'll be like evaporating into the light at the end of the movie or whatever, and then like the main character will be like, Babosuke, I love you, man. And he's like, it's fine, dog. I love you too. Die. And then they make a fucking statue to that guy. And you're like, that guy murdered 100 children. Are we not going to remember that movie or like a show? Like we'll have flashbacks of Naruto's dumbass on the swing 100 times. Y'all remember the war criminal Sasuke shit? Like y'all can't have a black and white flashback of that, please? So that is, I loved Naruto. That was like a key like piece of media during my like formative years, like the 13s era, right? Oh, yeah. So I loved it. But as I got older, I was like, oh, these parts of Naruto are just objectively bad. And
Mhm.
that that concentrated opinion of Naruto applies to a lot of the modern shonen, right? So when I see someone like Endeavor, who is like an abusive dad, which also hits home for many children of immigrants, right? Who is hyper focused on their child's success to the point where they forget they even have other children, right? I'm like, oh yeah, this character is irredeemable. This is the real villain of the show. I hope someone just pops this fool and then I clap. Like a Smash Brothers ending screen. I'm like, good, right? And yeah, exactly.
The Donkey Kong. Yeah, I had that.
Yeah. That's me. I'm Donkey Kong. But it really frustrates me sometimes because I feel like people, and this is coming from me, I have a medical reason to have bad memory, but it gets me really mad when people are like, they Kylo Ren Endeavor, where they're like, the end of the movie happens. I'm not a Star Wars guy, but this is the best reference in my head that I could have made at the time of like the end of the movie happens. Kylo Ren, spoilers, I guess, whatever. Kylo Ren and Rey do the kiss, and then he's like, ugh, dies and
Yeah.
then becomes Force whatever the fuck. And they're like, I'll miss you, Kylo. And I was like, wasn't he like baby Hitler
Oh yeah.
a movie ago?
He
Did
blew
we
up
forget
5
about
planets at once.
like we gonna forget about that? Like, I'm glad you got a kiss. You could have kissed a Yoda. I don't know. Like anybody else. Like you
Yoda,
could have
one of
kissed
them.
somebody, like anybody. And I feel like that's kind of how it goes with Endeavor, where they're like, yeah, especially in the most recent arc of the manga, no spoilers, but like things are happening. And everyone, like a lot of my this is gonna be a little call out post. A lot of my lonely women anime lovers out there are like, daddy, I miss you, I love you, don't get hurt. And I'm like, bitch, he like did fucking Punnett squares with his kids to get the best kid. If that happened in the real world, that person would be in giga jail. I don't care. Like
Ultra
and the thing
jail.
is, yeah, and I've had these conversations, like heated discussions with people that love characters like Endeavor or Bakugo or whatever. Like, Bakugo's not the same level, but like these like anti-hero, very easy to dislike characters. And it always comes back to like, hey, imagine if this happened in the real world. Shouldn't that person get clapped? Like, I would not like this person. And it's like the effect of you remember it was like a couple of years ago at this point, it was like hot guy fucking jail photo released. And it was like this
Oh
beautiful,
yeah.
like tan skin dude, bright blue hair, like amazing jawline. Everyone's like, bro, I want to fuck that guy. And everyone's like, isn't he like in jail for murder though? Like, shouldn't he fully do his sentence out? Everyone's like, nah, dog, I'll go to jail just to meet up with him, dude. And I'm like, I think we're missing where there's a disconnect between what you think is important and what I think is important. And that's kind of my issue with a lot of shonen anti-heroes that are supposed to be like Wolverine essentially. Like, is that, oh man, this character's so sick and cool. And I was like, yeah, I do agree they're sick and cool, but they did tell the main character in episode 1 to kill themselves and jump out of a building. And at that point in the show, that child was essentially disabled. So if I ever met a 15-year-old kid that told a disabled kid to kill themselves, I don't care whose kid that is, I am punching them in the head as hard as I can, right? Like, and that's kind of the disconnect I have at large. But the reason why I said it was the Kylo Ren of my hero is because everyone's like, I would die for you, Daddy Fireman. And I'm like, they just forget about the horrific child abuse.
That last bit is not a joke, by the way. Also, Bakugo does tell Deku to kill himself in the very first episode of My Hero. That's true.
Yeah,
It actually happens.
And as someone who was bullied, like New Jersey bullying is on, like, you know how they go into the hyperbolic space time
That's
chamber?
major leagues.
Every bully in New Jersey from like day one,
There should be
like,
saying
it's
two.
like it's exactly. It's like they're like, you know how people are like, I want my kid to play basketball, I want my kid to play football, I'm ready to make my kid the best possible sports person ever. Like, abusive parents in New Jersey are like, I'm trying to make my fucking kid the best goddamn bully ever. I'm gonna give him a baseball bat at the age of 1. I'm gonna have him be saying racial slurs and fat slurs every day. He's gonna be the best, the number one. Exactly.
The number one.
I see what you mean, though.
It hits.
I totally
it
see
hits,
what you mean, though.
hits
There's
hard.
a fine line between bad writing and good character depth. A lot of the times they kind of blur those lines, and it becomes hard to, I don't know, genuinely intrigued in that character beyond their points of like weakness. It is one way to put it, but yeah, there's a
100%.
fine line
Like,
there.
and the thing that also, like, I guess I didn't realize it was a problem in Naruto because I only had Naruto to reference it, right? And when I branched out, right? Actually, talking about Dragon Ball Z, Vegeta, ironically enough, is one of the best written anti-heroes in shonen and was written in the fucking 90s.
Mhm.
And nobody learned anything from the 90s until like One Piece came out. So, like, you know what I mean? Like,
solid like
that's
15
what's
years or
frustrating.
whatever.
Exactly. And that's what is frustrating. Like when I see characters like Sasuke and like other anti-heroes that aren't written well, I'm like, bro, we know how to do this right. And like, I'm actually wearing a Haikyuu shirt now, but the main antagonist from Haikyuu, Kageyama, is like, in my opinion, the perfect antagonist because he's not like, he's a dickhead, but everyone in the world around him is like, yo, bro, stop being a fucking dickhead.
Mhm.
But then he's like, I don't, and he just looks at them like, what did I do? Like he just doesn't like, he's like, are we not on the same page here? Like I'm saying the right thing, the kids are wrong. You know what I mean? Like that is like a good way of writing it. He's not like super egregious, right? But he's just disconnected from everybody else because he has a different worldview, right? And also when you learn more about him, you learn, oh, there's a reason why he's like this. There's an exact like pinpoint moment in his character arc where you can be like, oh, I get it. And then he grows out of that character flaw within like a season and a half. And you're like, oh, wow, growth? And we know why he did it. Okay, I like this guy. He's very easy to hate in the beginning, but then we eventually learn to like him. And then you see a character that is just him at the beginning in like season 2 or 3. And you're like, oh, Kageyama learned that he's a dickhead because he meets another guy who's just him and he hates him because he grew. That's just the story shit that I like. I just love narrative, dude. I just love it.
There's a lot of intricacies in there that can easily be just wrong, like just done wrong, gone about it the wrong way. So
100%. 100%. So all my anime watchers
So,
who
Chris-
are lonely, just get a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Stop fantasizing over people who are evil in anime, please.
Just go outside, please. I'm begging you.
Not now.
endeavor
but
of all
go
Maybe
on-
not right
yeah.
now. Yeah, maybe not right now. Maybe in like
go on Tinder
next year or whatever.
Exactly. Get the vaccine and then go outside and meet a girlfriend or boyfriend.
Perfect. So, Chris, did you have anything else before we wrap this shindig up?
That was literally the one that I had outside of Go Kansas City Breath Mints.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Let's get minty.
Bless up.
So, Ian, we talked about mental health and everything content creation. How do you think this went? Do you feel like you expressed yourself and people who watch this now understand Ianwhynot to the best of their ability?
I hope so. I would like to think that I'm an open book. So like I think that I'm not someone who shies away from questions that are like weird or difficult or subjects that are weird or difficult. I think that a lot of people don't like talking about mental health in public forum because either it's just difficult to talk about, right? So
Intimidating.
I think yeah, it's intimidating, especially with like people like you're like fairly like new hanging out with, right? But I think that ironically enough, a big facet of my personality, like the shorthand for getting to know me, is knowing about ADHD shit. You know what I mean? So that's why it usually comes up in like a lot of conversations that I'm having, because it's a part of my behavior, right? And it also connects to like my creativity, like the weird cutaway jokes and the weird side tangents that I go on during podcasts or like the dumb shit that I say during videos that isn't scripted. That's because I'm thinking of other dumb shit while I'm doing the first thing, right? Which is a facet of, you know, my mental, you know?
Oh god, get out of my head.
Hey, listen, man, I'm always a resource if you want to talk about this sort of stuff. So yeah, I would like to think that people, if they listen to this, they know where I'm at creatively. Because again, I would like to think that I'm simple when it comes to creative shit. I like talking about the shit that I like to talk about, and I'm not someone who's gonna just like force a topic out of me because of, I don't know, other people want to talk about it. That's why my game of the year video was like a critique of the idea of even talking about a game of the year, right? Like that. I didn't say Animal Crossing is good. You know, it was like this. Everything is dumb. All of it's fucking dumb. Stop talking about it.
You put that out like 2 days after we put out our Game of the Year episode too, which was excellent.
I know. Like,
well, here's the thing too, is that like people reached out to me. They're like, "Fuck, you're right," and I'm like, "No. Like, it's good to talk about it. It's good to talk about Game of the Year. It's good to talk about, especially in a back to psychology. It's good to talk about things you enjoy in a positive forum, right? But a lot of times, in my experience, listening to Game of the Year shit and also doing Game of the Year shit, it becomes like, okay, who has their fucking notepad open of every major story element from the game? Who has like their fucking talking points, like it's at night court and I have to fucking defend Pokemon versus Nier Automata. What I'm a like almost 30-year-old dude. I'm not trying to tell you that your fucking shit is bad and my shit is good, right? Like that just is not in my nature. And like if you listen back to like OK Beast Game of the Year shit, like I fully screamed because I was like, why are we fucking talking about this? I don't give a shit. Like you like this? Congratulations.
Sure.
You okay, good. Like and that's like that's another like big tentpole in how I do creative shit, is that like if I'm arguing or yelling or not having a good time or the vibes are bad, I'm not gonna enjoy it. That's why like the big idea with that video is that like none of our conversations about Game of the Year are productive. We either have a commercial over here or I'm screaming at T-Dog that he liked The Last of Us 2 and I hated it, right? Like, we can both like the shit that we like, right? And have a like a campfire discussion about, man, this is good. I like this about this. Oh shit, that reminded me about this thing that happened in 13 Sentinels. Wow, like the theme of depression is a thing that connects all the games we're talking about or whatever, right? Like it's much easier or it's much better long term to connect everything together than to shit on other people or shit on other people's preferences and be like, no, this is better, that is better. And that was kind of the the impetus of that video.
There's this weird culture that's come out just around like the conversation of the Game of the Year, to where it's like, hey, IGN said that, like, this is the Game of the Year or whatever, like this certifies that this is the best video game, and it's kind of, I think it's kind of gone alongside with people taking like game reviews just sort of like as gospel. It's like, hey, this thing scored whatever on, I mean, it's not a video game thing, but like Rotten Tomatoes, like this is unquestionably a good movie, and then I mean, there's always the conversation. It's like, yeah, but I didn't like it. I don't care if reviewers liked it or whatever. I call it the Last Jedi syndrome. But because I mean, reviewers loved it, people did not. I liked it. Just for the record, Last Jedi was a great movie. But it almost feels like it's so polarizing, and everyone decides to draw it like a line in the sand, like we're about to go to fucking war because, yeah, like you said, it's like, well, I liked Last of Us 2 and you didn't, and that makes us enemies now, and we have to sit here and argue this thing, which is why I really like the way that, I mean, to kind of brag about my own product for a second, I really like the way that we did it at Waypoint, because I mean it really was it really was the conversation. It was like, I liked this game because this, and everyone's like, cool, I like those things too, not crazy about this, but here's a game that I liked, and it just kind of went back and forth, and that's fun. I think we picked Last of Us 2, if I remember correctly. That was the one that ended
did ultimately as.
And that's the way to do it.
I tried to shove Hades in there as much as I could, but
and so to piggyback off of that, and creative shit as well, is that video games and making videos, for example, are connected, because I think that there are wildly different types of YouTube videos that you can make, or shit that you can make online, and there's wildly different styles and varieties of video games, right? That's why I feel like Game of the Year was so difficult for me, because I'm like, all right, well, I just literally don't like Last of Us 2 because it's what I like to call bummer media. And I have clinical depression. I don't need help being depressed. I can do that for free. I don't need to pay $60 to Naughty Dog to do that experience.
One of my favorite things that's come out of that is I think it was Penny Arcade who was talking about Last of Us 2, and they were just like, I don't really feel like killing dogs today. Maybe I'll feel like it in a week or so. They're like, I don't really need this right now, because it came out in the middle of pandemic and everything was on fire and sad, and it's just like, what?
But I have friends, and like going back to anime, like people have like really cut my ass over not like watching like Weathering with You or like the Makoto Shinkai movies, right? Because they're these tentpole anime releases. But I'm like, hey, bro, I watched a second of that trailer and I'm already sad. I don't need to pay Makoto Shinkai 1,000 yen to watch his movie and be sad. I'm sad for free, right? So that's like an eccentricity of me, a preferential thing that will always affect my preferences of both the stuff that I make and also the video games that I consume. So naturally, preferences are going to be wildly different based off of tons of different stuff. And again, it all cycles back to psychology, right? So that's kind of, why, like where that video stemmed from. That's kind of also going back to the original question of like me creatively. Like, I don't think you're ever going to see like a bummer video from me and me being like, hey man, it's been a rough year. Here's why I'm sad. Top 5 reasons why I'm sad this year. They ran out of extra toasty Cheez-Its at my local supermarket.
Ah, fuck, just end it all right there.
Number one.
That's it. It's
Yeah, I mean,
over.
like that's that I think says a lot about me, is that I don't want to fucking bring the mood down. I would rather like do dumb jokes and like have people laugh and like think than be sad. But that's not something that is universal for me. That's like a very specific thing that I think is just Ian shit, you know?
Sure. Yeah, totally. It's your creative outlet. It's how you express your creative urges to create. Honestly, it's just all three of us. If we were to put out a video about one topic, they'd all be drastically different videos. So like,
100%.
this is how it works.
There you go.
All right, Ian. Okay, Chris, we did it. We talked about it. We talked about the grind. To put it, yeah, for
That's
sure.
it.
Thanks
It's
for joining us, Ian. I had a really good time. We got on the topic of mental health and psychology. I didn't think that was going to go here. I should have expected it now that I think about it. But yeah,
Yep.
here we are.
That's me.
Enjoyed myself very much. So, thanks for joining
Thank
us,
you.
Ian. It was a great time.
Of course, brothers. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's again, when you invited me on, I was like, oh, of course, sure. Like, I know Austin. I'm so down. Like, whatever y'all want me to do, I'll be on. And the more I thought about it, and the more we were during the show, I was like, oh, I don't talk about my process. I don't talk about like making shit unless I'm like specifically asking like a superior, like someone who I know has been in the industry longer, like, hey, how do I do this effect or whatever? How do I do this? Like, it is, this show has a really awesome pocket of like, it's just not talked about a lot, I think, especially among like the indie creators of like, how did we get to make this thing? Who inspires us? Like how we are getting from A to B. Because 90% of the time you just listen to the podcast or you watch the video and you're like, that's a great video. Nice. Like, and then you're done. Right. You don't really think about that in between. And people that want to do that, there, I think, is a huge desire to know like how to be in the right headspace, where to be, what's the mental map to do this sort of shit. And I think this is an awesome show to kind of have that forum,
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
think calling it a niche isn't exactly the right word for it. I don't exactly know how to put out there into the world like that. But yeah, it's a conversation that you're like, it's intriguing and it's something that can always be brought up, but no one talks about it. So that's why I enjoy doing it.
Hell yeah.
I think that's going to do it for this episode of The Grind. I'm going to wave goodbye to the camera. I think you guys should do the same.
Bye.
Bye.